Hi, and welcome to episode 27 of Creative Dynamos. Today I have with me Kathleen Marple Kalb.
Kalb is right. You got it
All
with the
right.
Bronx A. Yep, my husband's from the Bronx, and it's Kalb.
And Kathleen, you and I connected over on Threads, I believe.
Yes, Threads is wonderful.
And you are a writer of fiction as well as a journalist. And but before we get into your books and talking about some of the topics I want to tackle today, tell me a little bit about how you got started writing fiction.
I've been writing fiction since I was 16. I wrote a historical novel when I was 16, like over my summer before junior year, and it was horrible. But I tried to sell it. And I actually got a couple of New York editors to read it, which thank God it never went any further than that because I wouldn't want my name on that now as an adult person. But it was, it was a thing to do and it was great. I learned a lot from writing it and I learned about writing. And then I started my journalism career as a teenage DJ in Brookville, PA. I was my radio career and eventually moved over into the newsroom. And for about 20, 25 years, I was primarily a journalist. And then I got married late to a fellow person in the business. And then we had a son when I was a little older. And I was working weekends in New York and being a suburban mom on the weekdays. And then the little guy started kindergarten. And all of a sudden I have 5 hours a day and I'm not working because I'm close to home. And what am I going to do with myself? And that's when I returned to writing and I started writing my very first mystery, which was set in Vermont. And it was not the one that would actually later be published. This was the best way to describe it is Janet Ivanovich with moose.
Okay.
And it was very good if you don't mind, low market Janet Ivanovich with moose, but it wasn't me. And I'm glad it didn't sell because life intervened and I went on a second querying process more than a year later after my husband recovered from a life-threatening illness. And that time I got signed for an historical novel, a historical mystery series involving a character who I like to describe as part Beverly Sills, part Errol Flynn, and part Anne of Green Gables.
Oh,
and all her
that.
woman. Yeah, she's the Ella Shane mysteries, which are now 5 and will be 6 in August. Sorry, not August, in June. Involve a woman who is a diva who plays trouser roles in Gilded Age New York. And she lives with her cousin who is as out gay as it is possible to be in 1899 New York. He's a former boxing champ, so he basically gets away with having a real life. And all these other characters who are around them. And it's a fun mystery series to write. And that's the one that I first got into print with. And then there were I kept writing and selling work and ta-da.
Fantastic. So I'm assuming your maiden name is Marple?
Yes, I really was born Miss Marple. As you know, in radio, people often have work names. People often have a radio name. And so I've spent my entire life showing my driver's license. I really was born Miss Marple. And at a rather older age, as I said, I married a little late. And so I was already established under my name of Kathleen Marple when I married. And I had just added the Kalb on the end. And so became Kathleen Marple Kalb. So.
I am a huge fan of mysteries. And I have my own, truthfully, about 85% of what I write has some mystery element to it because that's just my jam. And I can't imagine like the cosmic lottery that you hit as a mystery writer with that last name.
It's a trip. It's always fun when I go to like a conference or something and people always say to me, did you pick that as your middle name? And I'm like, no. Was actually born that way. And I, again, whip out my driver's license. But the funny one was my first agent who sold the first Ella Shane book actually wanted me to go out for sub as Kathleen Kalb. He did not want me using the Marple because he said it was too on the nose. And I said, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I said, I've been Miss Marple on the air for, by this point, I'd been on the air for somewhere for 25 years. And I said, I've been on the air my entire life as Kathleen Marple, and I've been on the air, more to the point, in New York as Kathleen Marple Kalb for several years. So you might want to reevaluate the idea of not using the Marple, because that's just me. And he's like, oh, okay, fine. And of course, it turned out to be a huge asset.
And that's great. Like I've got to imagine that having an established name, even if it's in a different arena, has got to be pretty helpful.
It doesn't sell the books for me, but it does get people to come up to me and talk to me. Somebody will ask me, come on, that's not really your name. Yeah, it is.
The books have to sell the books.
Right. Well, exactly. And also, I was a lockdown debut, and that kind of cut me off at the knees. I mean, there's really no way to describe what being a lockdown debut will do to a publishing career unless you're really lucky. And honestly, I wasn't. But I'm still out there every day. And yeah, people will always say, oh, Marple, really? Yeah, really.
You write what I think is described as cozy mysteries.
Yeah. Let's take a moment on that. Cozy mystery is a really large waterfront. There's the, grandma knitting cozies that you may think of when you think about that. There's a grandma and a cat and some knitting. And what I write, I think of more as modern cozies. Some people call them light traditional, but I think of them as modern cozies because, first of all, the casts are diverse. It's not all straight white people.
That's good.
Oh yeah. I firmly believe that the world, if you're going to write, the world should reflect the world you live in. And so, and one of my characters, for example, has two dads. They're not really her biological fathers. It's her mentor and his husband, and she refers to them as the dads she should have had.
Nice.
Because they're her dads, and they play an important role in the solution of the various things. And they're just there. That's Garrett and Ned are just part of the cast. So that, and many of my characters, I try to have a racially diverse cast, and I try to make sure that, and from working in a New York newsroom, I can borrow dynamics from characters and from people that I've worked with. So it's not fake. It's not like I'm, sitting there thinking, gee, what would a Hispanic person say? I know people of various backgrounds. So it's not like I have to, go out there and chase it. So I think these are more modern cozies, but that said, I adhere to the same kind of the basic cozy code, which is, basically people describe a cozy this way. Something bad happened. A bunch of people that we really like will put things right without anything too bad happening to somebody we like.
Okay.
And sex, blood, and most profanity are off the page. My Vermont radio mystery main character, Jay Jordan, I use a lot of hells and dams to simulate newsroom profanity. She's a radio person. She's a jock. And real radio people, when the mics are closed, have a vocabulary that would make Tony Soprano blush.
I can imagine.
Well, in a New York newsroom, the rule is it only counts if you say it like you mean it. And so the F-bombs are flying all over the place. But you can't do that in a cozy. So Jay will often, the people have actually complained about the large number of hells and dams in the Vermont stories and books, but that's to simulate the kind of profanity that would really be suitable for that character.
Sure. And that's the thing, that's the funny thing about genre tropes and sort of like the typical things that you find in genre.
Expectations.
The fans have certain expectations.
Oh yeah.
And you have to be sensitive to that.
Oh, absolutely. And there's things, that there's things I won't do because of things that I cover in my career. I mean, the reason I write lighter stuff is because I deal with very heavy stuff at work. And so if you're never going to pick up a book of mine and find a child in danger or a sexual assault on the page, that's never going to happen. And my characters, I don't even believe in putting my characters at risk for sexual assault in real life, in real time. Somebody may have been abused previously, that is an issue, but it's not going to happen in real time. Because, and those are genre conventions, but there are also things I'm not comfortable writing.
That makes sense. I've often thought like how to market some of my stuff. And I have a series that is Gaslamp Fantasy, but it's also very much a mystery series.
Yeah.
But I've been trying to decide if it falls into the cozy, like if it's enough, if it has enough of the
elements.
enough of the elements to be a cozy mystery. And I think there's probably too much violence.
But
truly,
remember, the rules are a bit different with historicals.
Okay.
My stuff, my first publisher, I've had two publishers for my historical series. The first three were with one, and my second three are with a different publisher. And the publisher of the first three was a large house, and they went out real hard on the idea that they were historical cozies, which was probably a misnomer. Yes, no blood or clothes on the floor, but also my main character has PTSD because she woke up in a tenement with her mother's body one winter morning, and we see her have flashbacks. Not real. That's not cozy. And I'm very realistic about prejudice. And there's a character who is half Black at one point, who is the son of slaves, and he's passing, and that's dealt with in a very straightforward way for the time. So there's stuff that happens that is not necessarily cozy in those books. And my current publisher markets them as historicals, straight out historical. And we're fine with that. She's fine with, they're fine with, my editor's fine with that. And the readers who are already hooked are fine. I already had a base of readers, and the new readers seem to be okay.
All right.
The most recent one actually went I was a little concerned because the most recent one really did tack into some pretty hard stuff. The main plot line was the Prince of Wales possibly fathering an illegitimate child during a child out of wedlock during his 1860 visit to New York. And now 40 years later, the main character's husband is trying to find out if that actually happens, find out what happened and such. And the possible mother died and so on. So there's this very serious historical tragedy going on. But the B plot involves a man living as a woman.
Okay.
And running a sporting house, because that's one of the few things that a sporting house brothel.
Yeah.
One of the few things that a trans person effectively could do and make a decent living in New York in 1900. And so this Alice, born Allen, is the most ethical madam in 5 Points.
Okay.
And it works, and the character works, and the plot works, but I was a little concerned as to how readers would take it, and they were fine with it. My readers like, okay, yeah, it fit the way that we've been doing this series had been anyway, and it was historically appropriate, so it worked.
I guess ultimately what I'll have to do is put out a call on social media for cozy readers and say, hey, I will give you a copy of my book to read if you can tell me if it fits in what your expectations of a cozy mystery.
Yeah. And cozy readers aren't monolithic either. There's everything from the clean cozy group, who are those are the folks who really are upset about very language, and there are some people who don't even want to see a murder anywhere. They want a plot that doesn't involve a murder. Most of the clean cozy folks are upset about language or sex or anything like that. So those people are over here, all the way, and then there's the paranormal folks who have different expectations. And then there's people who are cozy, but who will also read a lot of thrillers and things, who are perfectly happy with a little bit of blood and gore, as long as it serves the plot.
So these books, basically I have a detective, Esho St. Clair, and he's my Sherlock Holmes. If Sherlock Holmes was played by the actor that played Cisco on Deep Space Nine, and if he also had magic.
Interesting. That's
And so
so you're thinking paranormal.
yeah,
The conventions are different with paranormal. I am not an expert on paranormal because the only thing I write with paranormal is very light. You know, a character who thinks they have the second sight, or somebody who has regular visits with her dead husband. That's about as far as I go.
mhm.
But my understanding of the expectations of paranormal is that they are much less hung up on content issues. They seem to be
There's
much less hung up.
and the stories are fairly clean in the sense that
Yeah.
I don't use a lot of strong language because of who Esho is more than anything else. He's not the kind of person that uses strong language,
Right.
but
It's a character.
his sort of Watson is this like gigantic Irishman who is a little more colorful in his language, but he's not always involved and he's not always like on the page. And I forget, I may skirt some of his language.
You can also, with an Irishman, you can also use some things that are quite offensive in the context of Irish people, but are not actual profanity.
Right.
He can call people by names that are really nasty, but not necessarily sexual or vulgar profanity.
And if I really want to get creative, I can always go into Gaelish.
There you go too. Yeah.
But and there's some violence, but most of the really gruesome stuff kind of happens either off screen or isn't explicitly described, which for me as a horror author, which is my primary love, even my straight up horror stuff tends not to be super explicit because I am much more a fan of psychological horror, and I'm going to be taking a serious departure from that in a book that'll be coming out this year, which is a lot more explicit and gruesome and thriller heavy kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, I write multiple genres, so that's the fun / challenging part.
It is, and it's fun too if you write a bunch of different things, because a lot of times you may find that a story that appeals to you is good for a particular set of characters that you write. I write a lot of short stories, and last year there just happened to be a lot of good anthology calls last year, and I happened to just really bang out a lot of stuff for some very good anthology calls. Some editor friends were doing things, and I can't. And every time the anthology call came up, I would think, okay, maybe I won't do this time, and then I would think, but this particular character would be really good for this particular thing. And so I ended up with one friend, I ended up selling 3 different stories with 3 entirely different characters and setups, just because the anthology calls fit those people. And I think that's a lot of what you're talking about with the characters. You know, you find a storyline that fits your characters.
Yes, absolutely. And that could be, and that's for me as somebody who loves to write short stories. And I tend to use my short stories more as a marketing tool.
I do too. Yes.
For Patreon and Substack and Vocal.
Yeah.
And I'm rethinking that this year, trying to figure out where I want to put more of my focus. But yeah, like I love to write short stories, and I come up with the characters a lot of times first, and I'm like, now I've got the character in mind. What kind of story are they going to get involved in?
Yeah, I started by using my book characters as a marketing tool, like figuring that if it was in an anthology, that people would read the anthology and think my characters were interesting and come to the book. Or if it's in a magazine, one of the popular mystery magazines, say that it would. The best I've done, I've been in Hitchcock once. I haven't been in any of the other bigs.
But Hitchcock is tough to get into.
It is. I was really lucky, but I have, I think, well over a dozen.
No, don't say that. Don't say you were lucky. It was a
good story at the right time. It was the right, well-written story at the right time for the editor. Yeah.
There you go.
But and most of my big credits are the Vermont radio books, Vermont radio stories, because I've written like 2/3 of my 2/3 maybe. At least a half of the stories that I've written are involved with Vermont radio characters. And I just keep finding different things to do with my DJ and different ways to get her in trouble.
So you've mentioned a couple of different things, and like on the screen, I have the thumbnail. So guys, listeners, if you can, look at the thumbnail, because I took two of her covers, The Hound of the Bonnevilles and Something Poison. I can't quite make
Oh,
out the-
wrong poison.
Wrong Poison.
Yeah, those are the first two Grace books. Yes.
So those covers are so much fun.
Yeah. Hats off to Kent Holloway, who is also an author in his own right, as well as a cover artist. Kent
Nice.
Holloway. Yeah.
I will have to check him out. But so you have a couple of pen names, and I cleared talking about that with you before the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because some people like don't want people to like,
Yeah, I know.
for very good reason in some cases.
Oh, and yeah, it's true. I mean, this is the first time I've discussed this in public. I have written an erotica short story under a different name that will be published at some point, and I'm probably not going to make a big deal of that. Although, at my age, the idea that people think that I actually did write an erotica piece might it might be a good thing. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah. So
you heard it here first, people. Exclusive to the Creative Dynamos podcast.
Yes. So, but honestly, for me, it's not a big deal because I already had the marketing stuff in place when the Nikki Knight thing started. I had to, as I said, I was as a lockdown debut, so I had to kind of build the plane in the air with the big social media machine. And some things, I was not going to be able to start a whole new Instagram thing with a different name, or at the time, the most followers I had was on Twitter, and I did start a separate thing for Nikki at that point. But the way it all began was my agent sold my second series, which was the Vermont radio series, which was supposed to be a series, to a different publisher than it had my Gilded Age books. And because I was a lockdown debut, the numbers weren't great on the Gilded Age books. And the publisher who was doing the Vermont series said, "We want a different name." And I, my name, oh my God, for maybe a day. And then I thought, okay, they want a different name? We'll give them a DJ name, because the story's about a DJ in Vermont. We'll give them a DJ name. And so I was trying out different things and, Crystal Star and stuff like this. And my husband comes walking, and I'm trying out different names in the living room. And my husband comes walking up behind me and says, "I'm Nikki Knight." Yeah, that's the one. And there we were. Yeah. And then later, because so Nikki was associated with the Vermont book and the Vermont stories, which are a little edgier than traditional cozies. And when my buddy Kent, who at the time was starting his own publishing house, which it later was sold to Turner, who has the Grace series now. When he was starting off, he reached out to me and said, "Do you have anything that's a little out of the box? It's a little interesting." And I offered him Grace the Hit Mom, which is a cozy mystery series involving a main character who kills people. Mm-hmm. Evil men who deserve it. She removes them. She poisons them. She's a member of an ancient order of poisoners sacred to the Archangel Gabriel. So they take care. Yeah, of course she is, because why wouldn't you? But she's this nice suburban mom with this dark little thing. And Kent and we agreed at Charade. We agreed that I would stick with the Nikki name for the Grace book. And so, of course, the associated short stories are also under the Nikki name. And that's how we got two separate, but nobody cares. It's all me.
The Hit Mom are the Hound of the Bonnevilles and Wrong Poison books, right?
Yes, they're both Grace books. Yes.
You've mentioned the Vermont radio books. What's the gist of that series?
Okay, that's Live, Local, and Dead from Crooked Lane, and Live, Local, and Long Dead from Wild Rose Press, and both of those will be out in trade paperbacks from Harlequin. The first one, number one, is already available as a trade paperback from Harlequin, and number two will be in June. And they involve DJ J. Jordan, who has a big time New York life as a midday jock at a great radio station. And then her husband gets cancer, and he's in remission, and they split. As she puts it, her husband survived cancer, but their marriage didn't. Mm-hmm. And so this and in the book, the same time that her husband announces he wants a divorce because he wants to do different things, most of them blonde. That's also the point at which the radio station where she's working decides that it's going to go all sports. So Jay loses her marriage and her job in one big explosion. and decides and takes her severance and her broken heart and moves to Vermont, where she had her first big radio job, and buys this tiny little radio station where she worked with her severance money, and moves in above the radio station with her young daughter. Her daughter's a tween, about 10, with her 10-year-old, and takes over this radio station, which was a satellite talk operation, and running this horrible evil talk show guy named Edwin Anger.
Oh, I love that name.
Yeah, right. And it's all great until Edwin Anger shows up dead in a snowbank in front of Jay's house, in front of Jay's building, shortly after she took over. And the first book involves the murder of Edwin Anger, and Jay trying to track down the killer, and also starting an interesting little romance with the governor, who is this very hot guy that she knew back in the day. And it gets interesting from there. But that story, that book, Live, Local, and Dead, opens with probably my best opening line ever. I shot the snowman, but I did not kill the guy inside.
Oh, I like that.
If you have to, to the tune of I Shot the Sheriff.
Yes,
it
yes.
Fits. It fits.
Yeah.
And Jay's a jock, so that's where she hears it. So that's it. But the Vermont ones are just fun. It's all about radio and DJs, and there's a lot of stuff that I've done and seen in radio that ends up in them, things that are interesting. So
well, I think it's great to take a thing that you've invested your life in, and that you have a lot of insider knowledge of, and to infuse it into your stories.
Yeah, it's fun, and that's what works with Jay, and also with Grace. Honestly, Grace is based on the idea of being a suburban mom with a secret life. I am not an assassin. I am a suburban mom.
As far as we know.
I am not an assassin. I am a suburban mom who is a weekday anchor in New York. And for a long time, when I would be standing there in the pickup pen, listening to the other moms, talking about whatever, I'd be sitting there thinking, okay, great. And 2 days from now, I'm going to be covering the presidential race and figure in the middle of some god awful big situation in New York, and feeling like I had this secret life while everybody's talking about baby bouncies and the best applesauce packets. Not to trivialize either of those things, because they are very important at that moment. But yes. It's not timing out a half-hour show at the top station of the top news station in New York on time. So I felt like a suburban mom with a secret life, and that eventually became part of the thing with Grace.
I, not having ever been a mom myself, but having been a father, I can imagine how, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom for years. My wife was a stay-at-home mom for years. I can imagine how attractive, that kind of escapist fantasy.
Yeah. I do not know any people who don't love Grace when they hear about her, particularly females. I mean, I have yet to run into a woman who does not like Grace or admire her, or where can I get that? And the funny thing is, my late mother was absolutely enamored of Grace. She was very supportive of my writing. She thought the Vermont thing was cool. She liked the Gilded Age thing, whatever. But it was the happiest moment of her life when she found out that Grace was going to be published.
So you've also got the Ella Shane books.
Yes, that's the Gilded Age series.
Okay.
That's under my real name, and those actually play with tropes too. Ella is part Errol Flynn, part Anne of Green Gables, and part Beverly Sills, and her romance with the Duke, whom she eventually marries, is very much a riff on the whole Regency romance thing, because the goof here is that the Duke has to prove himself worthy of Ella, not the other way around. Awesome. Usually it's if a guy like that wants you, then of course, you must, no. And I was like, and they spend about 3 books arguing about how they're going to find a way forward together, that she can continue to sing and that he can be comfortable with that. And there's a lot of argument about, and they're actually in the 3rd book, which would have been the last if I hadn't been picked up by Level Best Books. In the 3rd book, I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but at this point we're 5 books in. So in the 3rd book, something dreadful happens, and it's only when Ella is badly hurt and they're both scared that they can finally admit that they got to find a way to make this work. And they do by agreeing on a marriage contract, which was both a done thing, but the way that they do it is not a done thing. And then they get married in book 4, and in book 5, which was the most recent one, they're out solving cases together again.
So that's 3 series.
Yeah.
Is that all?
Let me see. Vermont, Grace. Oh no, Old Stuff. Old Stuff is also out there somewhere. Old Stuff is with Level Best, and this is my history buff coming out. There's 2 of those out right now. The Stuff of Murder and the Stuff of Mayhem, and they involve a former history professor who is currently running the Historical Society while raising her small child and while raising her young son, and pitching in to help the cute state's attorney help solve murders. And these ones turn on things. The first one takes place during a movie shoot in the little Connecticut town, and the solution to the case comes from a tankard and woodworking on the set, and an old Bible, a 17th century Bible, and some other stuff. And Garrett and Ed, who are her 2 dads, pitch in a different way. Garrett's a retired state police trooper, and he has some insight on the crime side of it. And Garrett is a retired history professor who has reinvented himself as a social media maven. And so he keeps telling Christian what's going on in the social media world that sometimes leads to solutions. And then the second book centers around somebody's trying to develop a Regency romance style dating show.
Interesting.
And the main character and the murder is at the murder in Mayhem, the murder in the Stuff of Mayhem takes place at the 4th of July. Something goes very wrong at the cannon firing at the 4th of July, and somebody dies. And it turns out that it was fixed, that the explosives were fixed, and it gets interesting from there. And the last one under the deal for this one, so it may be the last, it may not. The upcoming one, number 3, is the Stuff of Malice, which takes place during a Shakespeare production on the Green in the little town. And the person who dies is Sir Jeremy, the director of the production. And he's, as the Christian describes him, he makes King Charles III look like Polly Walnuts, and he's been having trouble dealing with the lesser orders, meaning everyone who's not him.
Okay. So are most of your books, I'm going to use the terms that I know, like, are they whodunits or are they more how they done it? Like, do the readers know who committed the murders, or are they in a state of mystery, like the detective or whoever's solving the mystery?
In general, they're whodunits. Every once in a while, I do a how catch 'em, a Columbo style how catch 'em, but most of these are whodunits, and a lot of times, because they're amateur sleuth mysteries, the main character gets involved because somebody she cares about is suspected and she has to clear their name, or somebody close to her was involved. Like Ella, the very first Ella book, Juliet dies on stage from taking real poison, and everybody assumes it's a suicide. And Juliet's cousin, the Duke, shows up and wants to know what happened to his cousin, and that kicks off the real question of whether it was a suicide or a murder. And I didn't know when I wrote that, and did not know when I was going to be in front of readers, that was a really bad choice for a first novel, for a first in a series, because the readers don't trust you enough yet.
Right. And
so they're thinking that, it's going to turn out to be a suicide, and she's not going to be, I don't trust her and I don't like this, and it's not a real whodunit. So the reviews were a little uneven on that, because I didn't know.
Sure.
That was, and I thought, and a lot of the point of that first Ella book was also, the reason that it was designed that way was to make the historical point of how dreadful it was to be female at that time. And so, of course, it makes perfect sense that she'd take poison, because it really sucked to be alive as a woman at that time for some people. It was a really dreadful life for some females. So why wouldn't she? And the book was kind of divided in thirds. In the first third, we think it's a suicide. In the second third, we think it's, we're reasonably sure it's a murder. And then toward the end, we think that we're closing in on the killer. But that's not something that, if knowing what I know now about genre expectations, I would have written an entirely different book for the first book.
Well, that's the important thing as a writer. We learn and we grow.
Yeah,
Hopefully, hopefully.
yeah, yeah.
So, what does your creative process look like? Are you a heavy plotter, or are you a pantser when that comes to that first draft?
Yeah, I like to describe myself as a semi-pantser, which
Okay,
sounds like one of my son's
so you're
heroes.
capris.
Yeah, it's well, no, it sounds like Captain Underpants or something.
Yes.
One of his books. My son
Oh
is
yeah.
15, by the way, who and no longer reading Captain Underpants. But I'm a semi-pantser in terms of I get the beginning and end first.
Mhm.
I get I figure out where we are, the beginning and the murder and the beginning, and then I get the end, which is how everybody ends up at the end. And then I work my way into the middle. And somewhere after the first two or three after the beginning, the end, and a couple of big scenes, I get serious about, stacking evidence and that kind of thing. Because as a longtime journalist, and I've covered court cases and everything, I think of assembling a mystery as like building a court case. You're the prosecuting attorney. The way a prosecutor builds a case is the way I build the murder
Sure.
case. And so once I get a couple of the big scenes in, then I start thinking about how we're going to build it, and I work into the middle.
That makes sense. So what about the bigger picture in terms of 'cause you've got 4 series, I think is now we've arrived at 4 series.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, the contracts on those on most of those are up, and I'm waiting to hear how we're going to go forward with most of these. But I can tell you right now that in 2027, to a year from now, there will be a new book in a new series with a new publisher.
Okay.
That is certain. My agent has already made that deal, and that is coming. That is coming in 2027 from Amphori Press, the Roscoe Gang, which is a group of oh gosh, I always get this wrong. The Expendables, only with old radio news people.
Ooh.
So
All right.
they become a crisis communications firm, and they get involved in a murder at a Maine resort where a Appetite Network chef is clam baked.
Okay. Interesting. I like it.
Yeah, that's fun. I wrote it just for fun, and I'm really glad it sold because it was fun.
So when you're starting your first book in a series, do you have an idea as to where that series is going to go, or do you just take it book by book?
I get a larger idea as I go along. I'm incapable actually of writing something once. I mean, I wrote a short story that fit a friend's anthology call, and I really thought it was a one-off. And by the time I turned it in, by the time I got the acceptance letter from her a couple of weeks later, I'd already decided how I was going to bring those characters back. I am incapable of writing a one-off. And so I always think about what the next thing is for these characters. I am a big fan of slow burn romances. And so chances are pretty good that if you see a couple of characters who have a little bit of chemistry, you're going to see that's going to develop over time. But I'm also a big fan of long-term marriages. Grace and her husband, what's interesting about them is that they're married, and they're happily married, and there's some push-pull there. And we see them kind of work it out. And that's fun to write too, because that's very realistic. We all married, I think you can read the Grace books and really get a good sense of a working marriage in progress.
I have often played around with the idea of writing a slow burn romance, and in fact, I've got one it's kind of I don't even know if I can call it a B plot. Maybe it's a D plot in the case book of Esho St. Clair. In the 3 stories that I've got in it so far, Esho has this medium that he often consults with, and she is not entirely human, and she's like the offspring of a voodoo priestess and a Loa, which are the voodoo spirits.
Right.
And you never see her without a veil on, because seeing her full face will either kill you or drive you crazy.
That could be a
And
crib in a romance.
right. And so there, she's like, because she's of the opinion she has seen something in their future, but she doesn't tell him what she's seen. She's just like, we are not meant to be together. And he's
Oh.
like, I don't accept that. And so there's this like push pull
That's
tension.
cool.
So who knows? Maybe in the second novel, when that happens, we'll see if that
And
doesn't.
maybe there's some way. Maybe there's some way to work around it. You never know. I mean, if you're kind of working it up as you go along, there might be some thing they could do to work around it.
Oh, there's always, like, I'm a romantic. There's always.
Yeah, so am I. So am I.
Yeah.
I always want the people who belong together to end up together.
Plus the consequences are the fun part.
Yes. Yes. And
there need to be consequences, but that doesn't mean that the romance can't survive.
Yeah, the big knock on me is that I am much more interested in my character development than I am in building a perfect whodunit.
Mhm.
And you know what? It's true. I've gotten much better at plotting and bringing it home than I used to be. I'm much better at building a solid, red herrings and whatever. But at the end of the day, I care much more about my characters than I do about the puzzle box.
And I think and for me as a reader and as a writer, character development is always far more important than the plot. Like, I can forgive a lot if.
So can I when I'm reading. Yes, as a reader. Yeah.
If the character is solid.
The other thing I've gotten better at, especially with the Vermont stories and some of the others, is I really look to make sure that this is something that could only happen to these people in this place at this time. So when my Vermont character is involved in something, it's, for example, she solves a murder by recognizing someone's voice because she's a radio anchor and she's a radio DJ and she hears voices in a way that the rest of us don't. She can recognize voices because of her gifts and because of what she does at work. Mm-hmm. And so she's solved mysteries based on, or gotten a lead on the killer based on a voice or something like that. So it could only happen to these characters in this place. And that's a big deal for me.
Absolutely. I mean, otherwise, why would your character be the one who ends up solving?
Yeah, exactly. Why bother if it can't be unique like that? Yep.
And that's like why, in Escho's case, he's a consulting detective, but he often takes cases from people who either can't afford to pay him or can't go to the police for whatever reason, or whatever. And the cases that he takes from the wealthy tend to be the kinds of cases that the wealthy can't afford to go to the traditional law enforcement for. For example, in the gibbering Mr. Cravat, he has a wealthy client who is turning into this fish-headed monster, and
that's great. That is terrific.
It's very Lovecraftian, and the Mr. Cravat can't go to the police because the police aren't equipped to solve the puzzle of why he's turning into this monster.
And at that time period, they'd probably just throw him in an asylum and forget about it.
Exactly. And so he's forced to, go to someone who, like, money is not what's going to solve his problem.
Yeah.
But Escho will take his case because not only can he solve the problem, he'll also use the money to be able to afford to take cases that, other people might not be able to pay for. So generally speaking, I interview indie authors, but you are an entirely traditionally published author?
At this exact moment, mostly. All of my books have been out. All of my books have been traditionally published. Two with large companies, and the rest two series that Ella started at a large company, and the Vermont Radio started a large company, and then the rest of my books have been with various small presses. But that said, I have put out my own on my own as promotional items, two small books, two ebooks. One is a novella in the Ella Shane series. I entered it in a competition for a novella competition. It didn't place, and so there was nothing to do with it. And I kind of wanted it to get out in the world, so I did the process and I published it as a free item myself. And it's out there as A Fatal Honeymoon, and you can download it for free anytime you like.
which I've done.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's not necessarily entirely representative of the series, because a lot of the characters that you would see in a normal Ella book are not there. Particularly her cousin Tom and his partner Cabot are not there, because there was in 15,000 words you're not going to get everybody in.
No.
But so that one's a little more Ella centric than the larger books would be. The other thing I've done by myself is something called Boss Cat Holiday, which is a little holiday short story anthology under the Nikki pen name. It's three of my holiday shorts. I put a free holiday short up every year on my website. It's 3 holiday shorts and 1 short story involving a cat that was done in Cat's Cast. It was a script for a Cat's Cast podcast. And 2 of the 4 stories are what I like to call first person feline.
Nice.
Yes. And Neptune, that's his name. He's a big gray cat from the Bronx, and he is not your usual pussycat. Think Steven Sharippa from Blue Bloods.
Okay.
That's what Neptune sounds like.
Nice.
He's not cozy. And in the lead off piece in the little anthology that I put out, Neptune actually has to kill somebody to defend his family.
Ooh.
And he finds a way, as a cat, to kill somebody.
Well, I mean, cats are the ultimate predator.
Well, yeah, and Neptune just fine. I had to. That one was a tough one, because I wanted to. Neptune is one of those characters that is fun to write, and I wanted to do something with him. I wanted Neptune to kill somebody, and I wanted to figure out how he could. And so finding a way that doesn't involve magic, it doesn't involve anything too out there. I'll spoil it, because it's not necessarily that's not necessarily part of the story. It doesn't ruin the story for me to spoil it.
Sure.
Neptune manages to kill somebody by luring a guy out into traffic, and he gets hit.
Oh my.
And so, but Neptune actually kills him. And it took me a long time to find a way for Neptune to kill somebody, and that's what I came up with.
Very nice. So how did you find the process of creating the ebook and then doing all of that work?
That was a lot of work, but you know what? It wasn't unmanageable, and I think I would do it again. A lot of the folks who've read the first 2 Vermont books really liked them and would love for there to be a 3rd one. And I don't know that I want to go through the small press submission process and all of that again to get there. So if I'm going to do, and I have maybe a 5th of the 3rd Vermont book, I have like maybe 20,000 words written. And so if there is a point where my life calms down a little bit, I think I might just do the 3rd Vermont book all by myself and put it out there, because I think I can handle it. The cover art on the 2 that I did, where I did the cover art, I have a little bit of skill with paint, and Microsoft Paint is what I use. And I'm told Canva produces better results.
Yes.
So I might, if I learn Canva, I might try to DIY it, or I might just pay for the cover art. But I think other than that, I think I can handle it. The editing is not bad. The formatting is a bear.
Once you do it a couple of times, once you do it a couple of times, like I will, now that I've done it as many times as I've done it, which is quite a few, I will just take one of my previous books.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, that makes sense.
As the template for the next book or the next print book. So it saves a ton of effort for sure. As far as the cover art's concerned, yeah, you can get like really, Canva works well, or you can get really decent cover art for not a whole lot of money.
Yeah. I do a lot of slides on my social media feed. I do a lot of slides and quotes and things with either with the blurbs or with like fun lines from the stories or the books. So I'm really comfortable with moving things around and doing graphics on Paint. And everybody tells me that if I'm comfortable with that, Canva's a breeze.
Yes. Canva really is. Once you play around with it for a little while, Canva really is easy to learn, and there's a lot you can do with it. It's really about having the eye, and I tell people, if you're going to do your own covers, which I try not to do because I do not have a great eye, look at other covers in your genre, look at other covers with similar, look at comp titles and try and emulate what they are doing as best you can.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it yourself.
Yeah.
Thankfully I have a good relationship with a couple of graphic designers, and I usually will provide them with things like stock art and a general idea. The more I front load what I give them, the less expensive it is in the long run.
And well, and
that's
similar to what you do in a traditionally publishing context, where you tell the publisher's cover artist in one of the publishers that I'm with right now. The cover artist also happens to be my editor, so real easy. What the big elements are, what things should be in that, and they come up with that, so it works very well.
And I've got a great interview with a traditionally published author who's moving into self-publishing for a variety of reasons. That would be a great episode for you to listen to. Jay
I'd love to.
He lives in New York, and he is very talented. He's getting a lot of his rights back on some of his early work, and is self-publishing some of the follow-up, what you were talking about, to some of that stuff. So it's very viable in terms of doing the kinds of things you're talking about. Like if you have a series that your publisher is just not interested in continuing, but your fans are very interested in seeing more of, I think that's a great idea, personally.
Yeah, I think it's worth dipping my toe in the water on that. The other thing I'm thinking of doing, I'm really, this is truly just in the noodle stage, but because I'm a radio artist, a voice artist, of doing some kind of serialized audiobook thing.
Yes. So I highly recommend, if you've got access to the recording equipment, and I'm sure you do, doing that. Like if you can do your own audiobooks, yes. If you've got the time and the ability.
A few years ago, I was really, the last time I was with a large-ish publisher, they really pushed hard to talk me out of doing the audiobook. Because at that time, they didn't want it to look like it was an indie project or something. I don't know, but they really pushed hard to talk me out of doing the audiobook. And honestly, it was a Vermont book, and I think that of all the characters I write, I would like to voice Jay Jordan.
Sure. I am, I've been a podcaster for almost as long as I've been an author. Probably longer. And one of the things that I have done and will continue to do is podcast my own short fiction. And one of the things I've got on the schedule for this year is to start podcasting my fiction again. And I'm going to be podcasting some of my long form stuff with the eye towards turning it into an audiobook. And when I've completed the run.
Yeah, I have something that I have not published anywhere or offered to anybody that is not, so there's no rights issues, there's nothing, and it's wild, it's out there enough that I don't think anybody's going to want it. And I could, or at least not until there's a fan base for it. So I could just start putting that out there. And I'm thinking that may just be something I do in the new year.
Absolutely. And using a platform like Patreon, for example, to do something like that is...
I've never done Patreon.
Dead simple. Certainly not the topic for this episode, but if you have any questions about that, shoot me an email.
Absolutely. I'm keeping an eye on all kinds of different options, because I'm at that point with the contracts and the submissions and everything where it's time to start thinking about the next thing. And I don't know what that's going to look like. It's going to look like something. Absolutely.
So that is my next question for you. What is next for Kathleen?
This coming year, this is another 3-book year. I have the number 3s in the Old Stuff series. The Old Stuff series number 3 is due in February. Grace the Hitmon number 3 under Nikki Knight, also due in February from Turner. The Old Stuff is from Level Best. And in June, Ella Shane number 6, which is the 3rd with Level Best, is due. That one is called A Fatal Flourish. The Old Stuff is The Stuff of Malice. And the Grace story, the Grace book is Murder on the Sea Otter Express.
I love the titles.
Grace books. Yeah. Cozy mysteries have a long tradition of riffing on classic books. But even by that standard, Hound of the Bonnevilles was a real winner. And that was, again, my publisher at the time, Ken Holloway. I said, I'm having a hard time coming up. We had originally planned to call that one Have His Crankcase, because it involves a used car dealer.
Okay.
But Have His Carcass, which is the title of a rather obscure Lord Peter Wimsey mystery. No, everybody, I said it to a couple of people, like, and so Ken said, we got to find a different title. And I said, well, about all I can come up with is, because there's a lot, because the main character has a dog, and there's a purse dog in this one, is Hound of the. And he said, well, how about Bonnevilles? And so between the two of us, it was Hound of the Bonnevilles.
I love that. I love that. You know, that coming up with titles, many people say, is the hardest part.
Yeah.
And I love how playful that is.
That's one thing that's fun with the cozy mystery space, is that is there's a tradition of that. And it's also fun, for short stories, to coming up with titles for short stories can sometimes be a lot of fun.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's coming up with titles for short stories. Like a lot of times for me, the title sometimes will come first.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that the current thing I'm working on, I'm refilling the short story drawer this month. Sisters in Crime, the crime writers group, which is for everybody. If you're not a member of Sisters in Crime, you should be. I'm a board member, so full disclosure.
nice.
Is doing the January Jumpstart, and everybody's doing extra writing. And my January Jumpstart project is filling the short story drawer. And the short story I'm working on today is Dano and the Farkleberry Homicide. And I got Farkleberry Homicide first, no surprise. Farkleberry, and back in the day in Pittsburgh, was what they called the cookies they gave out at the fundraising remotes during the holiday season for the food bank at the Children's Hospital or whatever. There was like these, this window remotes. The DJ would broadcast from the window as a fundraiser. Right. And they called them Farkleberry cookies. And so, and Dano is the only private eye I write, a young lady by the name of Danny Chednick, who has 2/3 of a law degree and had to figure out what to do with herself when she lost out on a scholarship. And she ended up working for Mr. K and becoming a PI. And so nice. Danny is, yeah. And hence he calls her Dano. Her mentor calls her Dano, and it's a Hawaii Five-0 reference, obviously. Right. And so Dano and the Farkleberry Homicide is what I'm working on right now.
So I have a short story that, oh shoot, what's it called? It's come here, where are you at? Felicity Cash and the Cult of Nope.
Oh, love it. That's great.
I have always wanted to write a story where it's basically Dolly Parton and Elvira partnering up and becoming ghost hunters.
Oh, that's great. And
so I basically created these two characters, and they're basically like young versions of Dolly and Elvira.
That's great. Oh my gosh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, Felicity is Dolly, and she is basically this monster hunter from a long tradition of monster hunters from the mountains. And Elvira's stand-in is a ghost hunter and a podcaster, and they go in and spend some time in a cemetery. And while they're there doing their ghost hunting thing, these cultists come to sacrifice this guy, and they get involved. And it's a short story, but I think there's a lot more that can be done.
Oh yeah. With K-pop demon hunters out there, music stars with secret lives is a big deal.
Yes. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun to write. So yeah, and I think the title for that came first.
Yeah.
Once I had Felicity Cash.
Yeah, I definitely got Farkleberry Homicide first. But I do you brand them? Like everything I write involving the last star character is the last something, the last diamond or the last curtain call, caught by the last star. There's something related to her, or like with Danny, it's Dano and the. Do you brand them?
So for the Esho St. Clair stories, it's the casebook of Esho St. Clair, colon, and then the name of whatever it is. With my young adult series, Jenny Dare, it's Jenny Dare, colon, and then whatever the story is. So yeah, I try and give it some kind of consistency in the branding, so it's easy to find. Because with as many different kinds of stories as I write, and as many different series and one-offs as I do, it's branding is important.
It is.
Cover, branding on the cover is important. That's something I did recently with the help of a friend of mine on the St. Clair books. Thankfully, for the cover model for the Esho St. Clair, I found this cosplay actor, and he looked exactly like Esho and in my head. And I was like, can you take just a bunch of pictures in a bunch of different poses with several different props, as long as you're wearing like a dark suit with a bowler and just like I'll pay whatever. And so
that's awesome.
And so a friend of mine who's a graphic designer helped me do a little better job of branding the covers front and back.
Nice.
And I think something that my fellow indie publishers need to hear is if you're doing physical books, especially, make sure your back matter, your back cover.
Oh yeah.
There's some branding there. The front cover, there's some branding there. If you're doing a series, make sure there's some consistency and fonts and design, so that you can look at these books side by side. You can tell just without even looking at the title necessarily that it's the same series.
Yeah, I do something similar with my branding. You can see behind me, these are the fireworks. All of my old things going forward have this background, or part of it, the non-firework is on the promo slides for the next one, because it doesn't take place at the 4th of July. But all of my promo posts and the little quotes and all of that stuff use this background. And when I'm talking up the old stuff series, you'll see this background. I picked this one today because it is a good color and it goes with what I have on. And I have a pinky lavender spotlight kind of thing for the Ella Shane books, and so on and so on. And so it's kind of consistent for each series. Yep.
And that's the thing, make sure that there's even your social media presence. There's some, I just had a bunch of pictures taken for headshots, and make sure that you've got some consistency there across your various social platforms. Because you're a brand, as much as people hate to hear it.
Oh, absolutely. And I always tell people that I'm an author, anchor, mom, not in that order.
Yep.
We can go on from there, but that's my tagline, and that's the first place that we go. That's
a good one. I love it. I want to respect your time, and we're at an hour, a little and change. Kathleen, it was great talking to you.
Marvelous conversation. Thank you so much.
Tell our audience where we can find you.
Okay, Kathleen, the easiest place to just go to my website, which is www.KathleenMarpleKalb, all one word, .com. You can also follow me under my real name and Kathleen Marple Kalb on Facebook, or as Nikki Knight on Facebook, or you can get me as Kathleen Marple Kalb on Instagram, or this is my favorite one. This should have been my handle all along, Mystery Marple on Bluesky.
That's the key. That's what it is.
Should have been my handle all along. Yeah.
Right there. Well, I think the rest are good. I will continue to beat the drum. You need to register your name as a domain. Even if you don't have, people are going to get tired of me saying this, and this is going to go on my eventual bingo card for this podcast. Register your name as a domain, even if it just redirects to your Amazon author page. Doesn't have to be anything.
Own your content.
Own your content. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Wonderful talking to you. Thank you.